Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett. Tony Kinnett.
Host of the Tony Kinnett Cast.
Let's have a show.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
CYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WYBC. I hope that y'all are ready for quite a show of news because there's a ton of it. So without further ado, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled today 6-3, and I'm guessing that you can decide what those lines might be. 6-3, that the Voting Rights Act measure that essentially allowed states to craft racially segregated congressional voting districts. In essence, meaning that Louisiana, which is what this case was about, could craft an insane, a bat-crazy insane voting map that says, we think all of the black people live right here. If you're on the live stream, you can see. If you are not on the live stream, imagine a dinosaur throwing up into the air. That's kind of what the Democrat districts that were gerrymandered out, and they specifically created these in central Louisiana because the maximum number of black people, again, not even an actual definition for what constitutes a black person, whether we're talking about, are mixed individuals included? Well, how mixed? Are we including just one grandparent? It's not actually stated. But they crafted these racially segregated voting districts because the argument was made that, well, all black people vote the same. And you may say, Tony, that's incredibly racist. And yes, that is. And the Supreme Court of the United States today, by the majority opinion of Justice Samuel Alito, said, no, you can't do that. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, this congressional map which had been drawn with 2020 census data, ordering the creation of a second majority black district. The legislature passed a compliant map in January 2024, and that's when the lawsuit kicked in. Now, just to make this really clear, the 1988 case law did require these maps to be made, so this is something that has been baked into the cake for a very, very long time. In many states across the country, not just in the South, but here in my state of Indiana, the district represented by Representative Andre Carson is drawn along racial lines in Indianapolis. There are racially gerrymandered districts that are set up to essentially say, black people all vote the same, so we might as well draw a district around them. You may remember we had an entire Civil Rights Act that said, hey, you really shouldn't do the whole all of the black people stay in this fence kind of a routine. Now, this brings us over to the outrage from the left. So originally you had all of these articles when this case was being decided saying, well, if the Supreme Court rules this way, Democrats are going to go from having 24 seats in these states in the South to Republicans gaining 12 of them. So I do like the Democrats hold 24 seats in these states, and like the 24 seats is in blue. And then instead of saying Democrats would likely only have 12, then they're like, oh, Republicans would be gaining 12 seats here. Now, to be completely and explicitly clear, the Supreme Court's decision had absolutely nothing to do with the party lines written in the decisions. The only justices who wrote about a political party were Justice Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson. At least I'm guessing that's what she wrote. We don't have her opinion yet, but I'm gonna put 5 cents in that Democrat and Republican are both misspelled several times in her decision, or her dissent, I should say. So Elena Kagan, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Sonia Sotomayor voted against this particular ruling. And that brings us over to the bleeding and the pleading and the crying. So you may remember that just a couple of days ago, the Virginia Commonwealth Legislature had written this ballot referendum that was sent to the people of Virginia. And the people of Virginia voted based on this really weirdly written terms of services and conditions. Do you believe in fair democracy? Then vote yes, which would allow Virginia to do this temporary districting thing that heavily gerrymandered the state spaghetti style against Republicans. And we're going to get into that whole shapes and styles of gerrymander here in a second. And again, if Ketanji Brown Jackson, you're watching this, gerrymander, that's not a person. That's how you create congressional districts, okay? I know you struggle. So that brings us over to the reaction to all of this. So the reaction to all this, after Democrats like Hakeem Jeffries had praised and championed how great it was to be creating these gerrymandered districts in Virginia, just like Illinois and Massachusetts and California. Well, Hakeem Jeffries, he got really, really angry because he only really likes gerrymandering when it goes in one direction. And he really doesn't like it if you don't racially segregate voting districts. So he got a whole group of people out in front of the House, in front of the country today. And, well, here you go.
Today's decision by this illegitimate Supreme Court.
Illegitimate Supreme Court. We're starting strong right after the presidential assassination attempt, number 3 to 8, depending on how you're counting. We're going to already start going, everything I don't like is illegitimate. Excellent start, Hakeem.
Majority strikes a blow against the Voting Rights Act and is designed to undermine the ability of communities of color all across this country to elect their candidate of choice.
Now, that's a really weird thing to say. The reason that's a really weird thing to say is it assumes, it undermines communities of color to elect someone who represents them. So just a cool little fun fact here. No matter what color you are, you in your state get one vote. You do. You get one vote. And amazingly enough, there's this cool primary process where you can elect people to office. The idea that there is a community in your state that happens to have more people of a certain color does not make that city more special. It doesn't. If you have a community, for example, in Indiana, we have a town called Bern. And Bern has a lot of people of Swiss descent. There does not need to be a special voting district just for Bern, Indiana, so they can elect a Swiss descendant congressperson. That's dumb. That's stupid. We kind of went through a whole civil war and a whole civil rights act and a whole civil rights movement just to get past that kind of crap. But he thinks that just, there's a lot of black people living here, so you know what, therefore they could never agree with other people in their community, like common needs. Because obviously in Mississippi, the most important thing is the color of your skin, because the people that are in Jackson could never have the same needs as someone outside of Jackson. That's the argument that Hakeem's making here.
But we're not here to step back. We're here to fight back.
Yes.
You can't. The Supreme Court just ruled on it. Cry.
Now, when this decision came out earlier today, it's an unacceptable decision, but not an unexpected decision.
So they're all racist. Yes, no one hates black people more than Clarence Thomas, I'm told.
Because this isn't even really the Roberts Court. Mm-hmm. It's the Trump Court.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, which is why they've ruled against him quite a few times. I gotta say, you want to go after the merits and say, well, the problem is that their understanding is wrong. They're not reading the law correctly. You can say that. Now, some might disagree with you. You can get into the details there, but if you go, the reason that this happened is because the court is owned. This is just like individuals who complain about a decision that is made in Congress. They say, well, the reason's because they were bought out. Now, there are cases where, yes, congressmen may be bought out, or it could be that you need to elect congressmen who don't believe the same things that one does. If you want to put forward Supreme Court justices who can convince the other justices in a certain direction, don't send Ketanji Brown Jackson, who to this day, her greatest accomplishment is almost winning an Emmy.
Yes.
And what we would expect from the Trump Court is an effort to continue their scheme to suppress the vote and rig the midterm elections and beyond.
So that's the plan, right? The idea is suggesting, this is all for midterm election rigging. So there is a motion that has now been filed by Louisiana asking the Supreme Court, hey, can you push this thing through a little faster and essentially say that the new election map needs to be rewritten now so that this can be affected by the midterms? Because right now this decision doesn't really fit in with it doesn't have to happen by midterm. So Hakeem's just making stuff up. But of course, that's not all. Then we get into the statements. We have a lot of statements. They're very, very exciting. Hakeem Jeffries got absolutely roasted, ratioed, meaning everyone made fun of him. He said, quote, voter suppression is a way of life for Donald Trump and the far-right extremists on the Supreme Court. Republicans know they cannot win a free and fair election in November, and they are so desperate to rig it. The comments are filled with people going, hey, weren't you just celebrating the gerrymandering in Virginia? Wasn't that just your whole shebang that you were out cheering for? Radio crew will catch you on the other side of the commercial break. We got to get over to a little Schumer good time fun. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, while they're at the commercial break, we don't do that here. Hakeem Jeffries is mad. Chuck Schumer, he's so mad. He's so angry. He released a tweet and a statement. Pro tip to those of you out there who are in office: either release the tweet or release the statement. You don't need to release the tweet, which has your own text on it, and then after that, a bizarre picture of your statement. It's a bit of a hat on a hat. That's like announcing a press conference at a press conference. Dude, you're already there. So anywho, he says the Supreme Court just turned its back on one of the most sacred promises in the American democracy. Racially segregated districts? No, he says the promise that every voice counts. Again, it does. It does. You have one vote. And if you do not like how the districts are set up, it is incumbent on you to elect people from different state representative groups to send a better state legislature, whether it's bicameral, unicameral, to write a better map. That is the entire point. And in the South, Democrats, through the last 50 years, have decided that, hey, we're just going to try to get these racial-based voting districts going on. And then the Biden administration tried to cement that into law. Tony, you read the Hakeem voice more like Captain Kirk than Hakeem. I have said that Hakeem Jeffries is quite clearly the love child between William Shatner and Barack Obama. But anywho, so Chuck Schumer released his big statement. He's so mad. Oh, the consequence. He says, a law written in blood, sweat, and the sacrifice of Americans who marched, fought, and died for my right to vote. Oh, for the love. Stop it. Stop it. Don't do this nonsense. Now, it's not a Schumer statement. It's not a Schumer outrage until you get into a little, you guessed it, a little Jim Crow. Here you go.
And today we're ramping up our efforts. We see the need for it just today in today's Supreme Court decision.
Sorry, the audio quality is really bad here. It sounds like he's speaking through a scuba tank. This is how Forbes presented the audio.
Which was a despicable decision. That is a return to Jim Crow.
There it is.
Taking decades.
Yeah, see, so if we don't segregate people into voting districts by color. So again, if there was a population of 500 Japanese people in a town in Wyoming, why would we suggest that there needs to be a Japanese representative from that one town, and we must draw a district specifically to fit the ethnic makeup of that town? Why would we do that? I thought the idea that in America was this assimilation melting pot thing, that we all have come together to make something bigger. At least that's what the other side was telling me. But it appears that once we get in here, what do we want to do? This weird hyper-Balkanization thing. I don't think the American people are going to be buying that a bit. So there's a lot of other whining and crying and the gnashing of teeth, a lot of the sackcloth wearing going on. Rahm Emanuel also got out on this. Oh, sorry, Hakeem Jeffries released another statement. We're not going to go through it. So Rahm Emanuel has decided that the real problem is that Samuel Alito exists. So he says, quote, anytime Alito's name is on an opinion, you already know rights are getting gutted and we're going backwards in time. Oh, he's so mad about this. You do realize that Republican designated congressional districts do in fact elect not only members of Congress that are not straight white male, as we've had Representative Wesley Hunt from Texas on the show before. You have black Republicans that win primaries quite often in states that have Democrat districts that are written by Republican legislatures that aren't racially lined. You have people that elect candidates. And there are, believe it or not, there are black people that vote differently from other black people. I know, it's hard to believe, I know. Obama did the same thing. He wrote a paragraph and a half, and he says the Supreme Court decision effectively guts a key pillar of the Voting Rights Act, freeing state legislatures to gerrymander legislative districts to systematically dilute and weaken the voting power of racial minorities, so long as they do it under the guise of partisanship. Okay, bud. Real special thank you. Again, you said something different a couple of days ago. We're going to get to the radio crew back in. Don't go anywhere. A lot more news. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Last but not least, one of the greatest, saddest, cryingest boys out there. That's right, the governor of Golden Corral himself, J.B. Pritzker. He has waddled out to announce that from Illinois, from the state of Illinois, whose congressional districts right now look like worms with vertigo, has announced that Illinois is going to get out there and they're going to fight back against the Supreme Court of the United States. Interesting. So here, J.B. Pritzker's statement, he says, we must call this for what it is. It's voter suppression that will silence black and brown voters. Why? Again, why is there this idea that black and brown voters are all Democrats? It's very, very weird. It's a very weird thing to say. That you have black people and brown people, they all must think the same. After all, as Biden says, you got rich kids and then black kids, or you got, poor kids or white kids. I mean, do you really have to make it so obvious and on the nose here? But he also released a little statement here. There's kind of an awkward pause in the audio that, again, kind of an audiophile corruption thing, but it's worth listening to.
The decision by the Supreme Court today on the Voting Rights Act is an abomination. It is an attack on a crown jewel of our democracy.
Racial segregation.
Illinois is the proud home to having sent more black congresspeople to Washington than any other state in the country. And the Voting Rights Act is an attack on black and brown people, on people of color, on minorities. The decision that was made today, rather by SCOTUS about the Voting Rights Act, is an attack on minorities across this country. We're not going to stand for it in Illinois. We're going to push back. We have options for pushing back.
So we have options. We have options, which means they're going to gerrymander even harder. So again, Illinois is ranked as one of the most gerrymandered states in the country. It looks like a child trying to describe a Jackson Pollock painting. I mean, it's got districts that even Jon Stewart is like, my goodness. So anyway, you got little Pritzker out there. Also, I love that he says that Illinois has sent all of these black members to Congress. I will remind you that the very first 23 black members of Congress were all Republicans. But anywho, sorry, just to make this clear, let's dig into actually some of the reason that this is particularly hilarious. What is the new Illinois gerrymandered map possibly going to look like here? It looks like this. So for those of you that are not watching the live stream, but for those of you that are, out in your cars and about listening to podcasts and things, I want you to imagine really ugly hair. That is what the proposed possible new gerrymandered Illinois map might look like. It is essentially taking the state and carving it into a ton of teeny tiny, sort of diagonal, but mostly vertical slices, so that every single district gets a little bit of Chicago and then a huge chunk of the rest of the state to cancel out anyone in rural areas. Which, I mean, it's just a mess. It is an absolute mess. Now, if they did this, Illinois would gain a whopping 3 seats. That's it. A whole just 3 seats. Because it's already so gerrymandered. It's already such a mess. Even if they went full no Republicans, period, we hate all of you. Which, by the way, and if that does happen, I would personally love to see Governor Mike Braun just go ahead and send the Indiana National Guard in and liberate the southern 2/3 of the state. Those poor people. But anywho, this would be Illinois. Now, California suggested the same thing. Again, this insane scribble scrabble that looks like my kids trying to draw on the patio glass doors with crayon. It is a nightmare and a mess, which led to one of the best quips of the day, which is that when Republicans, quote unquote, gerrymander, it looks like just, wow, hey, look, like Alabama here, you have a couple of evenly sized, blocky chunk districts. Some might even call them regions. You have a couple of regions that people are in. And then when Democrats gerrymander, it looks like a schizophrenic on 3 Celsius energy drinks somehow got a hold of a blue colored pencil. I mean, it looks like your cat got a hold of a troll doll. It's a disaster. It doesn't look good for the rest of the country. It really is not a good look, and it's not getting any better for them because, again, as I told you, a motion has been filed by Louisiana to expedite this to happen a little bit sooner. And speaking of things happening sooner before the midterms, this brings us to Florida. The Florida House of Representatives today, again, see Republican gerrymandering, they're just blocks. no big loopy-doopy spaghetti. You can kind of see just a smidgen of the loopness. In what district is that here? 15? Other than that, they are chunks. You have honey bunches of congressional districts being passed today in Florida. So how did the Democrats in the House in Florida act? Well, Representative Angie Nixon just had a complete crash out. I mean, she got out the purple plastic bullhorn from Party City and she just went to town.
Destroy our democracy! This is a violation of the Constitution!
By the way, this is what you have a sergeant at arms for. The sergeant at arms is this really cool thing in the Roberts Rules of Order, one of the only cool things. And when someone is being unruly and acting like, well, you know, this, fascinating behavior, then, you know, you take the sergeant at arms and you say, you know, Sarge, this woman has lost her composure. And then he grabs her by the arm and he escorts her out of the room. But anyway, this is as they were passing the bill to redistrict Florida.
It's a violation of the Constitution. I'm out of order, but y'all are doing illegal.
Representative Persons Mullica has waived closed. The question now recurs on final passage of HB 1D. The clerk will unlock the machine and the members will proceed to vote. Have all members voted?
So they unlock the machine, and that means that everyone is allowed to vote, and then also final bets are placed on your horse.
Have all members voted? The clerk will lock the machine and announce the vote.
83 yeas, 28 nays, Mr. Speaker.
Show the bill passes. Read the next bill.
Man, Magenta from Blue's Clues really aged poorly.
None on the desk, Mr. Speaker.
All right, so 83 votes yes, 26 votes no. That gets Republicans an additional 4 seats in Florida. So other than Representative Angie Nixon engaging in fascinating behavior, there's more. But wait, there's more. And I'm not talking about OxyClean. Alabama currently has a direct appeal pending before the Supreme Court over its court-imposed congressional map that also added a second majority black seat. Meaning this, if Louisiana and Alabama, which are essentially asking the Supreme Court, please, oh, please, pretty please, would you get some of these racially gerrymandered districts that we've been ordered to put in by federal courts out so that we can get the primary process moving? It is a midterm year. Congressmen and women are up for election. We would like to not have to tell people that your district depends on what color you are. And that's likely going to go their way because also the Supreme Court, which didn't really take any action since November, was likely waiting for this particular ruling. Also, on the 27th, 2 days ago, in a 6-3 vote, the Supreme Court officially reversed a ruling that struck down the Texas congressional map. So Texas had created a congressional map that gave Republicans more seats, but also took down racially based districts and said, no, you can just be Texans. How about that? You can be from the Austin area. You can be from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You can be from, and on and on and on. And there was a court that ordered Texas to put the racial districts back in. And the Supreme Court had issued a stay. A stay is a temporary, hang on there, son, you just wait a second. They have officially ruled on the 27th. That court is ridiculous. Not necessarily the R word I was going for, but that court's ridiculous. And Texas, you can go ahead and redistrict as you would like. Because again, if you are redistricting just based on whether or not there is a Republican or Democrat majority, that's fine. That's allowed. That kind of gerrymandering is fine. If you're gerrymandering based on skin color, you're not allowed to do that. If you are lying on the ballot, if you're making the ballot really convoluted like Virginia, that's up for debate, but also probably not going to work. Also in Texas and in Florida, they called special sessions just for redistricting. In Virginia, they tried to shove it in last minute under a different emergency session. You also cannot do that according to former Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli. Now, radio crew, I'm sorry we have to send you back to the commercial while there's another stay. That's right, SCOTUS slapping out victories like Waffle House delivering those animal-style hash browns. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. Yeah, what, you thought this was just a little 2-for-1? No, we're reversing stays all over the place. We got a...
Answer there, the Daily Double.
The Supreme Court also today granted a stay from granted what was a stay on November the 6th. So you may remember that Trump got in office and said, these passports, they've got trannies and animals and all of this sexual deviance. We're not doing it. You're either a man or a woman or Pete Buttigieg. And so he asked the State Department to say, hey, guess what? Only men or women on official U.S. documentation, period. And then there was that court and saying, actually, transgender people, you can't erase and all that kind of garbage. Well, the Supreme Court of the United States had issued a temporary stay on November 6th saying, okay, yeah, the State Department gets to decide what's on passports, not some random lesbian judge in Washington. There's a difference. And the Supreme Court ruled also today that, yes, in fact, the executive branch gets to dictate what's on passports because the executive branch manages passports. You don't get to tell mama what's coming out of mama's kitchen. That's just the way that is. Oh, and you wanted one last, big, huge slam dunk from the Supreme Court? Since we're talking Samuel Alito stuff, right now being argued before the Supreme Court is a case about whether or not the Trump administration, the executive branch, gets to allow Biden granting temporary protected status to Haitians and other groups to naturally expire. Which is insane, by the way. The idea that if President Trump declared something, just did something today, and the next presidential administration couldn't then come in as the duly elected president of the United States and effectuate new executive policy, that would be nuts. Congress is supposed to be the thing whose laws, once they are passed, stay. Executive orders don't have any staying power. That's why the first day in office is always, all right, give me the pen. It's time to sign 532,000 things. Like, that's the kind of thing. So Samuel Alito took this really weird looking kid who looks like Bobby Hill from Hank Hill, that boy ain't right, arguing that, well, we can't allow Trump to allow temporary protected status to expire because that's racist. And here is Samuel Alito beating the crap out of him with a garden hose.
The government action. The Arlington Heights framework exists precisely for the purpose of sussing out whether impermissible racial considerations were impermissibly in the mix.
Isn't it?
So anyway, that's Jeffrey Pipoli, and he's arguing that I think Trump is racist. That's why he is allowing the Haitian TPS, temporary protected status, to expire. And Alito's going to say, what?
Case that TPS was terminated for quite a list of countries. I can't seem to find the particular page of the transcript where the district court goes through them all. And yes, none of those is a Nordic country. And I don't like dividing up the people of the world arbitrarily into three racial groups. But you say they're all non-white, and
so that would be, black, brown, and white.
That's the distinguishing characteristic.
That is the distinguishing characteristic that the district court held. But I would emphasize, Justice Alito, that.
But do you think that if you put Syrians, Turks, Greeks, and other people who live around the Mediterranean.
We're going to get into this. I'm going to have to bring the radio crew back from commercial. This is why Alito is incredible. This is what he does. And again, I've said this before on the show. White people, black people, brown people. What do you mean? What definitions? What does brown mean? Like, you think a person from New Delhi and Mexico City are the same? What's wrong with you? We'll get into that. We got to bring that radio crew back from commercial. We're going to enjoy. You are going to enjoy this. I promise. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast. One of the greatest things I have seen out of this Supreme Court, I was expecting Clarence Thomas to be awesome. I was expecting a couple of legendary rulings. What I was not expecting was Samuel Alito. Again, we've talked about this with Molly Hemingway. That's on the Daily Signal's YouTube channel. Samuel Alito has taken kind of the floor, taken center stage. Sorry, Ketanji Brown Jackson, I know how important theater is to you. Samuel Alito has taken the position of taking these goofballs, arguing nonsense before the court, which is that there's this kind of person called brown people, which means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. I used to argue this with, in Indianapolis public schools, for example, several of the other members of my department, whether it was my boss, Bobby, or whether it was, some of the other goofballs in the coordination departments. I used to argue with them. They would say, well, we need to make sure that education is inclusive for brown people. And I would say, what are you talking about? What is a brown person? What do you mean? And so what they meant is basically people who aren't European, but also aren't black. And I said, okay, does that mean that people who are Native Americans are considered brown? And they said yes. And I said, okay, great. Well, I'm technically, according to the little BIA card and the Cherokee tribe, I'm a member. So if I'm half Native American, because if we're going to count somebody who is half black as black, then do I also get to be Native American? And I kid you not, this scrawny little blonde lady told me, no, that doesn't count because you appear white, like you project white phonetically, or phenotypically, not phonetically. And I was amazed. She was an English coordinator, by the way, in case you were wondering. So in that entire weird framework of the left, what happens when you put that in front of Justice Samuel Alito? Well, he ends up getting roasted over the open flames.
The government action.
The Mediterranean in
Alito.
But do you think that if you put Syrians, Turks, Greeks, and other people who live around the Mediterranean in a lineup, do you think you could say those people are that all of them, are they all non-white?
I understand that Syrians, I think, may be classified.
If you can't see this, again, you're on the radio. I want you to picture Bobby Hill from King of the Hill. You know, that boy ain't right, with a pair of glasses on. You know, chubby big white boy. Nothing wrong with chubby big white boys, by the way. But this goober is arguing how the different peoples of the world and whether they're classified as white or not. It's incredible. Syrians, Turks, well, I mean, we all know Syrian is kind of like sort of white. Like, what eugenics list are you looking at there, Adolf?
Classified as white for purposes of the State Department, or for under certain government programs. But again,
the State Department, I went and checked this out. I actually reached out to the State Department and said, hey, do you have like an ethnic list as whether they're considered white? And the response I got back was, quote, my God, man, are you serious? Absolutely not, end quote.
And I think race is, you'd have to poll the public to know what they think the race of a Syrian is. I certainly think they're not white.
Poll the American people?
Well,
do they think Syrians are white?
I wouldn't think that most would, Justice Alito.
Really?
I really
Okay,
don't.
how about Turks?
I honestly haven't considered what racial component I would sort Turks into.
How about Greeks?
I don't know the answer to that either.
How about Southern Italians?
And the room laughs because of the last name Alito, huh?
Well, certainly 120 years ago, when we had our last wave of European immigration, Southern Italians were not considered white. So I think our concept of these things evolves over time.
How about Spaniards?
I think same answer, about 120 years ago.
Nope. I don't know how to tell. I love it when I get the chance to talk to a goofball, chubby white liberal who thinks that Spanish people, the people from Spain, from Europe, are not considered white. That like they're brown, like they think Mexicans are brown because they watched a Western when they were very, very small, and then they were told that Western was racist when they were in college, and so they've decided that all Mexican people are the color of sandpaper, which is just hilarious. They don't know how many, did a lot of Hispanic people have white skin? They have no idea. And it blows their mind. So anyway, here you have Jeffrey Pimpley, the attorney for Haitian nationals, arguing with Justice Alito who he thinks classifies as white or not.
I don't think they were considered white.
You have a really a really broad definition of who's white and who's not white. As I said, I don't like dividing the people of the world into these groups.
I understand. I would say that even under this court's rationality jurisprudence, if you look at cases like Moreno, it is not necessary for us to get strict scrutiny to win here.
That's insane. So the case that the lawyer is making here before the Supreme Court is, well, we don't really need to actually come up with definitions for color. You just need to say that brown people and black people, anytime you do anything they don't like, is racist. That is what he is arguing. And Alito says, do you know how dumb you are? Are you aware here in this court? Now, Sean Davis points this out over at the Federalist, and it's just too good for me to leave out. It's just too good. He makes the point that there's a meme, it's called a Wojak meme. That's where you take a picture of someone and then you stylize it down to kind of a very low resolution sketch. And this guy genuinely looks like the smug leftist Wojak meme in real life. So essentially there is a meme that makes fun of how a lot of liberals all look the same, and stereotypes be stereotyping in this case for a reason, because he looks exactly like the meme. I just think that's hilarious. I do, truly. Now that brings us over to the Trump administration and an era of actually doing things. And that sounds surprising, but Todd Blanche, the acting attorney general of the United States, the dude's been in office for a whopping month. He's been the acting attorney general, just under a month, actually. And we're already seeing a series of fruits here of these particular actions. That'll be the 4 over on the Chiron side. So first of all, James Comey surrendering to arrest today. So again, 2 indictments listed. James Comey originally may have floated the idea that he wasn't actually going to come out and comply. He was super Mr. Innocent Man. Well, today, a little different.
Well, Comey is in the courtroom, and the hearing is starting now. The very first appearance of this former FBI director accused of threatening the president's life with that post on Instagram a year ago with seashells in the sand. This is the first hearing that will happen in this courthouse, the Eastern District of Virginia. But this is a case that's charged in North Carolina because that's where that beach photo was taken. This first appearance, Comey now being under arrest in the courtroom. He's going to be before a
So the magistrate judge here, and then that case is going to be moved over to North Carolina. So also, before we get away from kind of the race concept here, from Reyna DeLazo here, Reyna DeLazo says, I can't tell you how many times that people have told me you don't look Cuban because I'm white, even though both of my parents are Cubans and now American citizens. Thanks for the super chat. And yes, that is quite true. So regarding the James Comey case here, there's a lot of pearl clutching, a lot of crying, a lot of very, very upset people who have made the case. You can't go after James. That was just an innocent message. It didn't mean that kind of a thing. As we said yesterday, James Comey screwed himself over when he did one thing and one thing only. James Comey got before the American people. This was on MSNBC at the time. It was a year ago. And instead of saying, I didn't mean it as a violent message, instead of saying, hey, I was just saying I want Trump to be out of office. I don't like the guy, that kind of a thing. Instead of doing that, he told Nicole Wallace that, well, actually, my wife, we were walking on the beach and then she said, oh, look, there's numbers. And we thought it was an address.
You were back in the middle of a political firestorm.
Yeah, for walking on the beach with my wife. So I don't know how we ended up here. It never occurred to me that it was any kind of controversial thing, but that's the time we live in.
So take me back to the walk on the beach.
We were walking on the beach. We went to the beach to prepare for this week, which was the launch of my book. And
a lot of you don't know this, and maybe I shouldn't say this here on the show, on the air, because, I'm going to do it anyway. I really don't enjoy when people really, 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 really have to push their book. There are some books that are absolutely worth reading. Molly Hemingway, I've told you, is a great example of this. She wrote an amazing biography on Samuel Alito and his work in the Supreme Court. Less of a biography, more of a workup on his court stuff. Excellent book. I have seen a lot of people who come to do interviews and things, book interviews, they're frustrating. I don't like it. But if you're being asked about a serious federal thing and you're like, we're walking on a beach because I wrote a book, and then we were like, oh man, we got to prepare for this book that I wrote that you can buy online. And I was thinking, man, how nice would a walk on the beach be to buy my book and write my book? My book, everyone's got to know my book. Anyway.
To think about the book and to prepare to answer questions about it. And we were walking back towards the road and we saw in the sand someone had arranged shells with numbers. And Patrice, my wife, said, why would someone put an address in the sand? And I said, I don't know. And we stood over it and I said, I think it's some kind of like political message.
And so I just took my phone and I snapped it because, when you see random political message, you're at the truck stop, you're at Love's. You go to the bathroom stall where a lot of random political messages are written, and you're like, hey, look at it, the people being political, and you post it. Oh, no one does that. Yeah, best of luck to you, Comey. Again, he could have gotten out of this just like that, but instead he decided to be extra, extra stupid. Radio crew will send you over to the commercial break. Try not to take any stupid photos and then lie about them while we're gone. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. We're going to continue on the live stream. All right, live stream crew, if you're tuning in live, no commercials for you. No, absolutely not. And by the way, tomorrow's show, just to let you know, is not going to be at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be at 3 p.m. because I have to fly to D.C. tomorrow, slip my wrists. And so just being real transparent here with you, we're just going to go a little earlier in the day. So you don't have to write that on your calendars. I'm not your mom. It's not a dental appointment, but join us if you'd like to. Anywho, there was also another major victory for Todd Blanche today. He confirmed today that federal grand juries have indicted 3 of the attackers that surrounded Savannah Hernandez, she's a conservative journalist, outside of Immigration Customs Enforcement in Minneapolis. So you may remember that this Savannah Hernandez, quote, was allegedly surrounded, physically assaulted, and shoved to the ground simply because people pointed out, or is identified by the defendants, as a conservative journalist. That's not peaceful protest. Remember how you've been told all of these people protesting ICE, they're just these, friendly neighborhood kind, hugs and snuggles kind of people? Well, again, she recorded this, and we've got the volume turned way down because you have Jennifer, the friendly, kindness lives here rape whistleblower, which again, by the way, that is also assault, blowing out people's eardrums. Then you have that one guy who still has a vuvuzela from the World Cup 10 years ago. And then because, people on the left acting violent, I know, I'm also shocked. They start attacking her and assaulting her, again, directly on camera, LaMonica McIver style. And they just get worse and worse and try shoving her to the ground and acting really atrocious and terrible and all that stuff. Now, by the way, while there may be some individuals at the Supreme Court level trying to argue, even though Savannah Hernandez has pale skin, she's still allowed to be Hispanic. I know that's it's crazy for, fat boys out there that look like Bobby Hill. But dang it, Bobby, you can't tell that she's Hernandez. Anyway, so good on Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. Again, pursuing these kinds of things directly, that making sure Christopher, Diana, and Paige Ostruco are facing federal charges. That's a good thing. It is. That's absolutely a good thing. And that brings us over to the rest of the administration. So Lee Zeldin is in it again today from the Environmental Protection Agency, which, again, he's also kind of in the running for for Attorney General of the United States. And I think he's got a lot in arguing cases before Congress that's pretty excellent. He was slapping around Rosa DeLauro, Bobby Hernandez Jr., that would be the son of the senator from New Jersey who was taking gold bars. He had a chance today on the Senate side to smack around Senator Sheldon White, who looks like Joe Biden and Mitch McConnell and every other super ancient man over on the Senate side of things. So here's a little bit of that today. Again, really stellar stuff from the administration right now. I genuinely wish we could have this all the time.
When predictions are made in the past, science will have a range of the pessimistic to the optimistic. And in order to justify, for example, the 2009 endangerment finding, they were adopting the most pessimistic views of the science. Now, when you get to 2026, great news, you're able to rely on present day facts in 2026 rather than any bad assumptions from 2009.
That's how you argue before committee. Guys, the data changes. Again, as we'd already pointed out previously, when Trump took office, there were scientists in the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration who said, I'm not going to release any data because it showed that climate change is not going to kill us all. So good on Lee Zeldin. We got to bring the radio crew back one more time. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast. We're going to push some of our Hegseth fist fighting in Congress today back a little bit because I want to give you some breaking updates on the situation in the Middle East. So as you will remember, the Iranian regime is actively crumbling. It is not going very well at all. Things are not looking excellent for the regime. And again, through this entire situation, when the United States has blocked any ships coming to or from Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz, what we started to see over the last couple of days is for the first time, some ships getting through the Strait of Hormuz, even if Iran, through the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the regime's kind of SS that has even held the president's office and some foreign ministers and some of the parliament at gunpoint. Not to mention Muqtada Khomeini, Mr. Supreme Leader, who is he's not exactly alive. So in this whole instance, in this whole case, if they can't even block the Strait of Hormuz, then things are getting really rough. And this puts, of all places, Pakistan in a rough position. Because Pakistan does whatever China tells it to, as we've said here on the show and have cited before. China really doesn't like that Venezuela is no longer a problem for the United States. They don't have their outpost in South America anymore. And also, China's really unhappy. Winnie the Pooh, President Xi, he's unhappy that Cuba isn't exactly giving them all of the goods and being kind of a bastion for communism in the Caribbean anymore. And so if they lose Iran, because Russia, again, the foreign ministry from Iran went to Russia and begged for help. And Putin essentially said, nope, I will posture for you. I will do things for the Iranian people. It's very good, excellent. I drink lots of vodka from time to time. Like that was all that was there. They said, can you help us? And Putin was like, niet, which means no in goat, like that kind of a thing. And so the next day, Putin was firm on his word, and he said, Trump, listen, I will help you end war because I'm good man, Vladimir Putin. I know a lot about pushing regime leaders off of rooftops in Moscow. I'll do right here for you. And Trump said, maybe you get your own crap in order first before you're offering assistance. And that was essentially all of Putin's help. So this means it's all on President Xi because they don't have enough oil to invade Taiwan. They don't. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve of Panda Express is empty. So what are they going to do? They have now told Pakistan that if you want us to continue helping you defend against Afghanistan, then you're going to need to open some land trade routes to Iran so that we can float them some stuff. Because if the United States no longer has to focus on Iran in the Middle East, we're very scared. And so that's exactly what happened today. So Pakistan made some dumb moves. And this would be that they have opened up 6 land corridors to Iran, 6 overland routes from Karachi, a city I have been in and do not ever, ever, ever want to be in again, and Gwadar, straight to the Iranian border, to Gabd, Taftan, multiple variants. This means that third country goods could theoretically now transit Pakistan to Iran by truck under customs overnight. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but it is often not really good enough when you're comparing trade routes for massive amounts of supplies to throw a couple of cheap Chinese semi-trucks that have to go through the wonderful highways and roads of Pakistan, all the way to Iran, where the trucks are just going to dump stuff off at the border. Again, So, good luck. Good luck to you. Now, there is one of the 2 of these trade routes, I should say, are supposed to arrive at a Gulf point for the Gulf of Chin and then therefore be transferred maybe by boat over to Gwadar. You're really, really hoping. That's some kid playing railroad tycoon level logic there. Yikes. Not a lot of throughput, as Factorio players might say. So, not a really wise move. That is absolutely China ordered. That's the plan here. The Trump administration is not going to be a fan of this, and they are getting kind of tired of waiting around. It's now been long enough here. The president of the United States can say the ceasefire has, now ended, and the next military operation is not necessarily going to be a continuation of Operation Epic Fury, but something different entirely. Again, the United Arab Emirates has now made plans to leave OPEC. That is going to also crash the price of oil on the global stage. So this brings us over to the President of the United States and CENTCOM. So what's the response here? What's going to happen? So first of all, the President of the United States gets out and on Truth Social today, he made this post. Iran can't get their act together. They don't know how to sign a non-nuclear deal. They better get smart soon. President DJT. And he posts this picture of President Trump holding an M4 with explosions behind him. And the caption is, "No more Mr. Nice Guy." Cool. Do it. Do it. It's just, there is truly something about this that I would really, really, really love to see. I absolutely would. That brings us over to the statement from CENTCOM, again, in these particular updates. According to a statement from U.S. Central Command Commander Admiral Brad Cooper, quote, "The United States has now directed 42 vessels to turn back to Iranian ports or turn away from transiting since the beginning of the U.S. blockade. that being the Strait of Hormuz. 200 aircraft and 25 ships are involved in the operation to deny vessels access, those would be from China, to Iranian ports per the release. And I think that we should have the media here, yes, we do, of the kind of the way that United States, especially a lot of the helicopter and crews, are taking care of this on the Strait. Look, two things can be true at once. Is it kind of a propo video? Yeah, absolutely, because that's government media. That is the point of propaganda. It gives you updates, but also it's like, hey, look at how cool we are. We don't have to use AI for those, unlike other countries. So cool stuff, neat stuff. Now, is NATO doing anything? I remind you, Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor of Germany, was out and then in more than a kid singing the Hokey Pokey. So after the ceasefire was announced, you remember he said they're going to come in and like escort stuff through the strait, and then that vanished into the wind. Radio crew will catch you guys later. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Will continue here on the live stream. Y'all take care. All right, now that they're all done and out of here. Regarding the bizarre flip-flops in Europe, the President of the United States, after Germany has been in and out and in and out, and then shake it all about, the president has now said, quote, the United States is studying and reviewing the possible reduction of troops in Germany with a determination to be made over the next short period of time. Thank you for your attention to this matter, Donald John Trump. And I think this is a decent move from the president. Why we need to defend Europe when they won't even assist in guarding their own international waterways. And you say, but the United States started this fight. Why can't it finish it? Guys, this is not the first time in history. This ain't even the first time in the last couple of centuries that the United States and Europe have operated like this. I will remind you that back in the early years of the American Republic, there was this group of states, maybe even Barbary states, a group of Muslim pseudo-nation city-states in the Mediterranean that would rob other vessels and would, do the old Muslim thing of executing Christians and, raping women and children aboard, classic Muslim piracy stuff. And the Europeans, they didn't actually want to arm the Mediterranean or send their navies down to take care of it because they're cowards, because the Europeans for centuries have been cowards. Anyway, so the United States, freshly minted as a country, didn't have the money to pay the Muslim tolls because the Muslims were used to saying, hey, we're going to board your ship. Give us lots of money to not rape and murder and steal. So the United States, Thomas Jefferson said, we can hyperinflate our currency or we have this thing called a navy. Why don't you arm each admiral with a bunch of cannon and a middle finger, and then you send that out? And the United States then gave the Marines and the Navy itself its proud tradition, its oldest tradition of telling the British to, deal with it, and then also sinking Muslim pirate ships, while the Europeans were trying to pay off the Muslims. So this isn't the first time that we've seen Europe acting this way, and it is absolutely appropriate for the United States not to just say, yeah, we'll take care of you and wipe your bottom for you and all this stuff, but you don't have to actually do anything useful. If NATO is a one-way turnstile, then there's no need for the United States to maintain it. So, moving on from that brings us to the Secretary of War and some of the congressional stuff. But first on the list here, I've gotten a couple of comment questions. I'm a little concerned that you guys notice this as much as you do. But whenever I'm drinking water, you guys think that for some reason I'm down in moonshine. I'm from flyover country, but I'm not that reckless. I've been drinking a lot more water on the show lately because the very, very kind folks over at Cove Pure, I told you a couple of weeks ago, reached out and said, hey, we sponsor Victor Davis Hanson. We noticed that your show's got quite an excellent audience in the live chat. Would you like us to send a Cove Pure machine your way and do like a test ad read for us as well? And I said, that's very kind, but before I ever do any kind of reads to my audience, I test it first. I work very, very hard. I test it. I don't just, you're not going to see me advertising supplements on this channel. I don't like that. I like to try it before I say, hey, I like this thing. That's why the pre-sleep stuff has been in my description forever. That stuff works. I use it. So Cove Pure sent a water purification thing, and I hooked it up out here in the studio. We don't have water in the studio, not in this studio anyway, and has started using it. I'm a Midwestern dude. I love well water. I'm a well water man. The Newcastle Till Plains water, the best in the whole stinking country. I despise other places' well water, and so Cove Pure, they made the very, very kind after sending me that. I tasted it, and I didn't think there was anything that could actually elevate my well water. And I am being 100% upfront and clear with you. And so Cove Pure very kindly letting me keep the best water purification thing. It kicks Brita right in the teeth. And of course, on the political side of things, many of you are from other parts of the country. We have a lot of people who watch from Michigan. You know the reputation that Flint, Michigan has. If it taught this country anything, it's that the government's word on your water, cities and towns saying, oh, your water is really safe and wonderful. That means nothing. Flint wasn't a one-off. This problem is everywhere. That's why, one of the many reasons why, I started using Cove Pure to purify the water. Now, there are still millions of lead service lines actively carrying water to America's homes. You know this better than I do. Many of you guys worked on those lead-lined pipes in America's plumbing. Many were installed, however, before some of your parents were born. It's not your fault. Don't get me wrong. So here's what the government doesn't tell you. The testing method that utilities use to check lead levels, it's specifically designed to collect the least contaminated sample, not the worst. EPA scientists, again, here's Lee Zeldin again, has confirmed this. Most recent federal data shows that water systems serving more than 250 million Americans detected lead from 21 to 24. Lead has no taste, it has no smell, it doesn't change color of your water. Obviously, the scary part being there's no safe level of lead exposure for you. Now, even low levels directly linked to brain damage, learning disabilities, irreversible developmental harm in children, Cove Pure removes this stuff. Removes all of it. It's certified to eliminate up to 99.9% of contaminants. That includes lead, but it also includes PFAS, fluoride, pharmaceuticals. Setup couldn't be simpler. 2 filters, 1, 2, that's it. No plumbers, no drilling. You put it on your counter, you plug it in, you fill it up, and it's also got like hot and cold, which is, Brita doesn't do that. I'm just going to level with you. I like it. Nice for tea. And look, you can use it. You don't have to wait for the water to chill in the fridge. You don't have to wait for the kettle to boil. One tap, it's instantly ready. Go to covepure.com/TonyK. Yeah, that's right. They're sponsoring the show. I'm thrilled. Covepure.com/TonyK. The K is necessary. You can get $250 off the thing. I'm thrilled they're doing this for my audience anyway. I love it. You say, Tony, you're taking a couple of minutes on this. Yes, because it's good water. It's delightful. I'm a huge well water supremacist. It's fantastic, and it tastes delightful. It's good. I recommend the products that I use. There you go. Now, a little bit of the Hegseth stuff here for the almost to the end of the show. We don't do a ton of sponsorship stuff on the show, but the ones that we have, I really like. So there you go. No, it's not. Shine the comments again. Is that shine? No, it's not. All right. That said, nice try, TK. I know that's totally moot. It's not. I promise. All right. So over to some of the Secretary of War Hegseth stuff. I'm looking for 2 things going into these committees. First of all, you know my rule. All committees in Congress, all of them. It's got C-SPAN stamped at the bottom right-hand corner. It's a congressional committee. It's theater. It's theater for you. It's so that right before the midterms, your congressman or congresswoman in the House and the Senate, they can run ads going, I smacked down this person. I'm so tough. Look at me. And Republicans and Democrats both do this. Committee hearings are theater. They do almost nothing at all. Unless you're Brandon Gill and you're actually there to get work done. Brandon Gill absolutely destroying a major abortion activist recently. We'll have to get that clip in tomorrow, though. So what did Hegseth do? Well, I'm hoping he doesn't do the Pam Bondi, Kristi Noem stuff, and I don't think he did. I was happy to see we didn't get a ton of that. So into the Hegseth stuff, there were a couple of notable moments today that may not get replayed, meaning some of the major media outlets going to try to brush over that. Democrat Representative Ro Khanna lost his mind because Hegseth confirmed that so far the Operation Epic Fury in Iran has cost about $25 billion. Now, I was also told by a bunch of media reports that it was estimated to have cost about $1 billion a day. And we're into I believe the 40s. So if it's 25 billion, it seems like a lot of those articles were full of crap. But either way, Here's Ro Khanna asking Pete Hegseth to divide $25 billion by 375 million on the spot. Ro Khanna's like, get out your calculator and tell me how much is the every taxpayer per day divided by 3, carry the 4, paying for this. And Hegseth's like, dude, are you okay?
When predictions...
Oh, wait a minute. I actually, that's my fault. I loaded the Lee Zeldin clip in myself over the break. Sorry. Here you go. Here's Ro Khanna, very grumpy.
Do you know how much it will cost Americans in terms of their increased cost in gas and food over the next year because of the Iran war?
I would simply ask you what the cost is of an Iranian nuclear bomb.
I'm going to give you that opportunity.
I would simply ask you what the... you're playing gotcha questions about domestic things. I'm not...
You're saying it's a gotcha question to ask what it's going to be in terms of the increased cost of gas.
Why won't you answer what it costs to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear bomb?
I give you that, sir. But let me...
What would it cost? What would you pay to...
Okay, so I'm going to criticize both parties here. So Ro Khanna did one thing that is an actual good thing here. He says, and I quote, I'll give you that. What is the cost of Iran having a nuclear bomb? Okay, cool. There you go. That's the thing. Now answer the question. So the gotcha's been moved out of the way. He still wants you to answer it, and you should still answer the question. And you can just say, I don't know what the cost exactly is per taxpayer, but I know the total cost, which eventually we do get to.
To ensure Iran doesn't get a nuclear bomb. What would
you
pay?
I reclaim my time. Do you not know? You had no one do the analysis of what the increased cost of gas and food on the American people are going to be?
What is the cost of Iran holding that straight?
So all right, so we had a slight chance where he almost could have asked Hegseth a fair question. And again, good to know, total cost of the war. But asking whether someone in the Department of War sits down and goes, okay, now I need you to figure out the national gas price. Again, gas prices are different, state to state, company to company. You need to figure out all of the individual math. You guys, there's not like a Department of War position that does that. Maybe the Office of the Treasury or a congressional commission might do so and then request data from the Department of War and crunch the numbers. Or believe it or not, this is one of the few times I can say this is a really good use of think tanks. That's what they should be doing. But like just saying, you don't know, you haven't sat down and done Fibonacci's equations. No, don't blow it. But again, Ro Khanna, dude he couldn't land anything. So there you go. There's Representative Sarah Jacobs, who then we start getting silly. Because we can't just ask, Americans have some questions about the situation in the Middle East and about Iran and about the end games and about the process and what the definitions are, what can be told. There are fair questions to ask, absolutely. So when you have the Secretary of War before you, asking those questions might be a good use of time. But instead, here's Sarah Jacobs.
Do you believe that the president is mentally stable enough to be the commander-in-chief?
Did you ask the same question of Joe Biden for 4 years?
Mr. Secretary, Joe Biden is not the president. Mr. Trump has been president for a year and a half, and I'm asking you
did
right
not.
now.
And I won't even engage with the level of disparagement that you're putting on the commander-in-chief, who indeed is...
Mr. Secretary,
every single day.
Mr. Secretary, Biden is not the president.
Most insightful.
So there's a little strategy that Hegseth is trying here. So my personal preferred strategy is where you answer the question and then you follow up with a concurrent question. So after you answer the question, you say, yes, I believe he's competent. Also, is this the first president you've ever asked this about? So she's from California's 53rd, and she has been serving in Congress since 2021. So her last term was Biden. You're right. Hegseth is correct. She's never once cared. In fact, she's one of the congresswomen who claimed that the president was totally fine and amazing and wonderful and doing handsprings behind closed doors. Hegseth kind of started by asking about Biden so that she would then fall over herself and get mad and try to think that she's smug, knowing that Sarah Jacobs would then post this clip herself, where you guessed it, she's getting roasted all over social media.
Commander-in-chief we've had in generations. And you want to compare, you want to ask that question after you and your fellow Democrats defended Joe Biden, who could barely speak and didn't know what day of the week it was?
You know,
he governed through an auto pen. He had a Secretary of Defense who went AWOL for a week. I can't be gone for 10 days.
Okay, so again, not bad. Not my preferred favorite. Again, do I think any of this matters whatsoever? No. You say, Tony, you're being kind of harsh on the committee. I've told you guys a ton what I want out of congressional committees. I'm very precise because I think that politicians should be disappointed parents. Hegseth is great. I've had the opportunity to meet him once. Nice guy, great guy. Think he's a good Secretary of War? Absolutely. I hate congressional committees. I hate them. I hate them because it's just talking over each other all diggity dong dang day. Can't stand it. Now, then we get to the dumbest. So we had that Joe Biden thing. Now we get to Congresswoman Marilyn Strickland, who, if you're going to go after Hegseth, you're going to go after all of this stuff. There are two things that you really, 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 really should not go after Hegseth on. Two things. Do not go after Hegseth over firing people. The Democrats cannot help themselves. You could ask a million questions about why this, when now, how about this? Instead, saying, why are you firing people? Joe Biden, he promoted people based on their character. Yeah, that's going to be a no. And Hegseth points that out. Here you go.
Always had a merit-based system. That's not the argument.
No, we have not. Not under the Biden administration. We did not. It became social engineering, not merit, and we're fixing it quick.
No, it didn't.
Oh, yeah, yes. The Admiral in a dress was promoted clearly because of his stellar experience as brass. No. Nope. And by the way, those of you who have been in the service, or even those of you who have contracted and have spent time around conventionals, you will definitely attest that at the upper brass levels, there are a lot of people who have been promoted, especially in administrations where they had absolutely no business whatsoever doing anything useful. In fact, there are quite a few who have been the congressional appointments from rather left-leaning districts who have showed up. I can't help it anymore. So when I was in the process of competing for my slot at West Point, they have this thing called Summer Leadership Seminar, where you go and experience life at West Point for a week. I will never forget that two of the ladies that were in my section were exceptionally overweight ladies from very left-leaning districts in the United States who could do none of the physical requirements just to be at a military academy. And that is not just something that is kind of relegated to congressional appointments. That stuff happens with those who leave physical standards behind later on. So going after Pete Hegseth because of high standards and following orders, not sure that one's going to stick. Not sure that one's going to stick at all. Last but not least, you had Representative Adam Smith, Democrat of Washington, questioning Hegseth on bombing Iran's nuclear facilities. So we're going to try this line. The idea that the Trump administration has not been explicitly clear about Iran's nuclear program, and Iran has been explicitly clear about, we're going to keep trying to enrich things. Pretending not to know anything about this, there's a group on the far right, kind of the isolationist Tucker Carlson crew, that also pretends not to understand things regarding Iran. They're like, you said it was completely obliterated, gone, erased from existence. What happened? And the answer is, they tried rebuilding it. Do you not get, you're not understanding things. And then the counter is that Obama's JCPOA said if we give them tons of money and let them fund Hezbollah and Hamas and a bunch of other terror proxies that kill Americans, then they totally pinky promise they're not going to enrich things. And then, of course, we found out that they were enriching things anyway, and they just ignored all of that. But anywho, here's Hegseth being questioned by Representative Adam Smith here.
Under this administration, unlike other administrations, which cut bad deals and pallets of cash with no ability to oversee whether Iran is actually pursuing a nuclear program. Which is where we want to litigate JCPOA or the Iran deal. Our view, the president's views, that was a very bad deal. Okay. That gave them a bunch of money up front.
What's the future?
To fund, you talked about negotiated deals. Allowed them to fund their proxies and spread Hamas and Hezbollah all around the region, build up nuclear capabilities.
What are we going to do now?
President Trump has been clear-eyed, from the killing of Qasem Soleimani to the pulling out of the Iran deal to Midnight Hammer and now to this effort to recognize that you have to stare down this kind of enemy who's hell-bent on getting a nuclear weapon and get them to a point where they're at the table giving it up in a way.
So Representative Smith has an opportunity to say, I agree, I would like some specifics and standards. That would be, by the way, kind of a bipartisan measure and asking some specific questions. Are we going to get that? No.
So they haven't broken yet. Okay, we haven't gotten there yet for all of the.
Well, their nuclear facilities have been obliterated. Underground, they're buried, and we're watching them 24/7. So we know where any nuclear material.
Reclaiming my time for
a
quick second here. We had to start this war, you just said, 60 days ago, because the nuclear weapon was an imminent threat. Now you're saying that it was completely obliterated?
They had not given up their nuclear ambitions, and they had a conventional shield of thousands
so
of
Operation Midnight Hammer accomplished nothing of substance. It left us at exactly the same place we were before. So much so that
their facilities were bombed and obliterated. Their ambitions continued, and they're building a conventional shield.
All right, let me try again.
It's the North Korea strategy. You know this very well. The North Korea strategy was use conventional missiles to prevent anybody from challenging them so they could slow walk their way to a weapon. President Trump saw Iran at its weakest moment, took an action to ensure, in a way that only the United States of America could do with our Israeli partners,
and yet
to ensure their conventional shield was.
Okay, so his argument is that because Iran is still saying they're desperately clinging to it, it's failed. Boys and girls, I hate to inform you of a very, very common sense thing that a lot of the high academic elites are trying to ignore for cheap points. There are individuals in this world, there are actors who will simply ignore anything whatsoever because they haven't bought in. Not every country is going to do the surrender on the boat, giving everything up. We are in the middle of watching, explicitly and clearly, a regime that is fracturing and is changing some of their internal staff. I believe still, based on the evidence, you will see a balkanization that takes place at some point in time. It is. There is a series of very basic, fundamental, common sense understandings. The idea that you can simply negotiate no matter what, always. And every person just wants a good deal and all that, that's bullcrap. There are those out there that will take every opportunity to molest you, to take advantage of you, to destroy your stuff, and to steal it for their own. That has been true for all of human history. And whether you do or do not like this president of the United States and his cabinet, it is true that right now this administration is acting in a manner that is not based on the complete cuckery of several centuries of the Europeans. Yes, including all of Europe, including the Danish and the Swedes. I saw a comment very kindly saying I was wrong. No, the Swedes actually, they did not, bow down to the Barbaries. No, all the way up to and including 1798, the Swedes paid off the Barbary states multiple times, including to get back, I believe, 160 sailors in one particular tribute, 131 sailors from the Swedes. They continued paying tribute until at least 1845. So yes, I'm sorry, Europe sucks. So anyway, that all said, kind of a good time here when it comes to this type of international understanding. I think personally, it's a pretty important facet of international policy not to ignore basic history. And a lot of the American people do in fact agree. Now, there's a lot of other stuff going on around the country right now that isn't just involved in international policy. One of these things involves school choice. And what we're seeing right now is truly marvelous. We're actually watching a lot of the states in the South, since they have started adopting school choice measures. So we saw this in Louisiana in the wake of their charter program and Hurricane Katrina. And now we are seeing this in other states from Mississippi to Arkansas, who are skyrocketing in the national rankings for education performance in English and math, history and science, in attendance records, in extracurricular performance. We are seeing the South experience a renaissance in education because they are instituting school choice. It's truly incredible stuff. So we're going to go over to a good friend of mine. We're going to chat a little bit with Nick down in Arkansas just about how some of these programs are moving and shaking, because you do kind of need to know this stuff. The teachers' unions aren't quite out of it yet. We go over to Nick Horton. He's the founder and the CEO of Opportunity Arkansas. You may think that after the Biden administration was kind of out to pasture, we brought in this new administration, kind of the school choice fight is over. No, there's still a ton of work to do in education. There are a lot of fights that aren't over. Nick, thanks for giving us a couple minutes.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So there's a lot of news that we could talk about regarding the South today, the Supreme Court notwithstanding, but there's a lot else that's going on as well, and kind of changing how the South in general, especially obviously the state of Arkansas, operates in education. Give us a bit of perspective here.
Well, it's been a really exciting few years all across the South, as you said, and particularly in Arkansas. So our organization launched in late 2022. And within about 6 months, we had a new governor. Governor Sarah Sanders came in, made this a priority, And we got universal education freedom passed into state law in early 2023. And it's one of the best programs in the country. In fact, you look at some of the great resources that are out there from EdChoice in particular, it used to be the Friedman Foundation. We're third now on the Friedman Index in terms of education freedom and the rights. It's a big leap. It's a big leap from where we were before. And when you look at states like Arizona and Florida and states that were a little bit further down the road than we were, it's a huge jump, and we're really, really proud of it. But as you said, the work is really just beginning. And so the left is very, very energized against this program. They have been from day one. Immediately after the law passed, they started organizing and putting together a referendum to try to force the thing on the ballot. They've put together legal challenges. They've had several more petition challenges since then, one of which we're dealing with right now. And they know, frankly, Tony, they know how big of a threat this program is and education freedom is to the grip that they have on the next generation.
And this is something that we've seen in Florida. It's something we've seen in Indiana, even the state of Mississippi, going from down at the very bottom of the barrel in education to just in a couple of short years, now climbing very quickly to being one of the top states in a lot of the educational statistics. And we're seeing that a lot because of the school choice programs that are coming into effect in a lot of these states. So I guess because I'm stepping a little bit back into the education world, it's what I used to do, obviously with Chalkboard Review. Now that we're looking at, in the case of Arkansas, all of these referenda that are being suggested, legal battles, as you put it, how is the left avoiding the conversation of, look how much better the kids are doing? Because it's very difficult to whistle past that graveyard.
Yeah, frankly, it's a great question. And the left is doing what the left does best. They're inventing their own facts.
Oh, I thought you were going to say painting their hair. Oh, okay, sorry, inventing their own facts. Okay.
For debate, I guess. But they're inventing their own facts. They're creating a lot of, frankly, false narratives about the program. They're pushing a lot of false narratives around fraud and the fact that, oh my gosh, we're just giving these families all this money and it's just flowing out the door and nobody knows where it's going or how it's being spent. Nothing could be further from the truth. Every single transaction in this program is reviewed to make sure that it complies with program rules. They've got, you've heard all the typical myths, Tony, about how, well, it's really just for rich kids. But by the way, there aren't actually schools for these kids to go to. So it's really unfair. Whatever they can come up with to throw against the wall. But we're really encouraged, frankly, because we've seen even in recent weeks, even in recent days, the governor's continued to lead on this issue broadly and put forward really aggressive funding for this program for next year. We've seen new public opinion polling that's come out that our organization has published that shows that 81% of Arkansas parents support this program. When was the last time you heard 81% of parents or people agree on where to have dinner, much less on a government policy or a public policy like this? So the support is really strong. And I think the left, they're going to do what they do. They're going to community organize and agitate because, frankly, it's all they have, but they're going to continue to lose.
So one of the things that, at least in this argument, you mentioned, what other things, do you see 81% of people agreeing on? And the only other thing that I can think of that Americans, at least 81% of them agree on, would be the Save America Act. So, again, common sense things that make sense when it comes to choosing where you get your education from, choosing who it is provides your energy service or your garbage service, or whether it's getting voter ID legislated. These are common sense approaches that I'm seeing a lot of the out-of-touch crew kind of fester in. This is what really shocks me. This is the part that really I stub my toe on. I go to DC and I feel more out of touch when I am in our nation's capital than when I am broadcasting here from our studio in Indiana. And I see a lot of the academics that were formerly pro-school choice even, that have gone into this hiding in an office day and night. And you mentioned EdChoice. There were some former colleagues and friends of mine and Rob Enlow's over at EdChoice. We've talked about this for quite a while, that have gone into this hyper racially segregated, pro-union, creepy, weird alternate reality. those are groups that still have an outsized lobbying impact on a lot of state legislatures. Are you guys still dealing with a lot of teachers union and then also these like far left-wing groups, SPLC comes to mind, lobbying a lot of the state legislature?
Absolutely. And the latest attack that I mentioned that we're dealing with right now on education freedom is actually being spearheaded by the Arkansas Education Association. And they're out getting petitions. I know, shocker.
I know. Did the face look surprised enough, or was it too much?
Well, the good news, Tony, in all seriousness, is that they have lost a lot of influence. That is objectively true. And as I mentioned, legal challenge after referendum, after petition, they're not going to stop because they have nothing else to do. And this is their business model, is to community organize and to agitate. But they have lost a lot of influence, and that is very encouraging. This amendment that they're putting forward right now, it's the exact same amendment they proposed 2 years ago. It was overwhelmingly rejected by the people of Arkansas through a lack of signatures. And we expect that that's going to happen again. But the challenge, as you know, Tony, is that they're not putting petitions in people's faces and saying, hey, this is going to end education freedom. Hey, this is going to cement a blank check in our Constitution for all these new Mamdani style welfare programs that we're trying to create. Hey, this is going to end charter schools and micro schools and force every single school in the state to look exactly the same. They're not saying that when they give you the petition to sign. They're just telling you that it's going to make Arkansas better and it's for the children. And so what we're doing is extremely important, in my view, to make sure that people have the facts and know what this amendment would really mean for the future of Arkansas and for the next generation.
I think that's pretty on point. Nick Horton, founder and CEO of Opportunity Arkansas. You can check out a link to his stuff in the description. Thanks again, man.
Thank you.
All right, a little bit of good old mail time.
On the Tony Kinnett Cast.
Here at the end of the day. So a couple of things here, kind of finishing up a little mail time here before we sail out for the evening. First and foremost, from Debbie Harkness asks, hey, will this whole Supreme Court thing, will this actually affect Virginia redistricting? And I've gotten about 18 variants of that today. Whether the question is going to affect things maybe in Indiana, or whether we're looking at, other states getting messed with. The answer is mostly no. Now, I think that the Virginia Supreme Court is likely to strike this down, not because of racial districts, which is what was swatted down today. You're not allowed to racially segregate stuff like this. That's what Alito's opinion stated. But the core problem for Virginia is that the ballot initiative, first of all, I hate constitutional referendums. They're stupid. The idea that you just say, hey, do you guys think everything should just be different? And then the ballot measure has to be created, which in Virginia's case was done improperly in a session that wasn't for that. And then number two, they wrote the ballot, like the constitutional referendum, they wrote it like a Facebook terms and service agreement. Like, do you agree that justice and fairness and friendship and in this neighborhood should all be friendly and wonderful? Oh, look, there's the trolley. I mean, that kind of crap was the ballot referendum. So that was pushed out to the Virginian people. That's likely what's going to get it struck down, according to, again, former Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli. He has a great interview with this. I know the CNN one has been pushed around. On his first interview regarding this with the Scott Jennings show, that's primo good stuff there. So to answer that question, I think the only state that could really be affected here might either be California or Illinois. And producer Josiah points out one of the reasons that this might be the case, one of the reasons this might in fact be the case that the Illinois, especially with J.B. Pritzker, is rushing so quick to announce that he's going to do a new gerrymandering project, as producer Josiah points out, is that in the very last Illinois redistricting measure, they specifically organized districts around like racial lines. So sorry, that's the Indiana aquifer. That'll be the next question. So here is the current this is the current Illinois congressional map. Again, you can see the weird loop-de-loops and strange stuff. There are arguments to be made that when you get up around the essentially all of the Chicagoland area, there are several districts that are directly drawn around ethnic lines, which under the Supreme Court interpretation, that's now open to a lawsuit. So the Supreme Court wouldn't likely strike down the map. Someone would bring a lawsuit and say, hey, well, this is race-based. And given that J.B. Pritzker's been kind of open about that before, then the Supreme Court would strike that down. That would be the process. So as producer Josiah pointed out, the reason that we might see Virginia currently trying to go for the, and I'll try to flip back here. The reason you see Virginia currently trying to go through the really bizarre L'Oreal hair streaking down thing is because you can make the case, well, this is actually just partisan. And this would be the argument from the Illinois lawyers. We already know we are rigging this for Democrats. That is legal. Now, voters don't usually like that when you're honest and say, hey, we're rigging this partisanly. It would be what producer Josiah argues that may be why he's floating this already. Again, because it's partisan, not just race-based in this particular instance. So that being kind of Illinois House District 4 is the one that he's suggesting. I can't drag that in right now, but look it up. It appears to be a very racially based thing. So, you know, not too good, Don. Now that brings us over to another question. Tony, why are you so obsessed with your particular well water? Great question. That's not a joke. I am a huge fan of, particularly if we look at the Indiana watershed map here, I am in the upper, I'm between the upper White and Driftwood watersheds, where I believe, or excuse me, these two aquifers between upper White and Driftwood here. I believe that the blend of those two, because those aquifers are connected, those are connected aquifers. They are the best. They are delightful. It is a delicious sampling of the finest water. Delightful. The first thing I do, and the first thing I will do, when I get home from Washington, D.C. on Friday afternoon, before coming out here to get the show ready, I will have a drink, a massive gulp of Indiana well water. Now, producer Josiah also pointed out, quite accurately so, that a literal aquifer map made by nature, made by the Lord, right here, this looks more normal than a Democrat gerrymandered map. There is less nonsense going on with aquifers than with a Democrat gerrymandered map. And that is an excellent point from producer Josiah. So, correct, accurate, excellent, as always. On to kind of the last question. Is the code case sensitive at Cove Pure? I'm not entirely sure. I will ask on your behalf for that one. I would assume that it's not. But check the description on that. We'll get back to you on that. If it rejects it, then maybe try it with it. I mean, it'll tell you whether the code works or not. When you put that in over at covepure.com/TonyK. One of the last mail time questions. One person is pointing out that 4 different Virginia constitutional procedures were ignored. Again, I'm not entirely surprised. Not entirely surprised at all. Mitch Mess, a YouTube member, asks, is the $25 billion as much as the amount of money that Omar stole? Very good. No, it's bigger. But I wouldn't tell Ilhan Omar that, because she's liable to think that instead of her original net worth being $30 million or the cost of Operation Epic Fury being $25 billion, given how she reads numbers, she's likely to think that it's $11.6 cajillion. So, you know, to be fair with that side of things, one individual not exactly particularly thrilled with me, Nuke Wester, saying, look, losing respect for you, the Barbary Corsairs were not a monolithic group defined solely by a single religious identity. I never claimed they were, but absolutely the Barbary states were all emphatically Muslim. Every single one of them. Every single one. A Quranic charter was a part of every single Barbary state and North African Islamic, called like the Quaternary Caliphate group states. Every single one of them. Absolutely. Now, I'm the United States targeting, again, Benjamin Franklin was openly pimp slapped in a Philadelphia newspaper. And this is one of the things that ended up leading him to, there's a quote often cited from Ben Franklin where he says, that, you know, even if a Muslim, you know, father came over from the Ottoman Empire and to the United States, he would have a place to preach or give his sermon here. Well, he was talking about one particular hall in Philadelphia that he built, not like every place regardless, but by the time at the end of Benjamin Franklin's life, because he was mocked for defending Muslims when they were harassing and raping, yes, the Barbary states, openly, clearly, Quranic charter states. Well, you know, I mean, he ended up flipping it around, and then Ben Franklin's description of Muslims near the end of his life, oh boy, they're spicy. They're very spicy indeed. So, you know, little good times there. And also, I'm you know, when it comes to citing historical data, I'm not citing that off the top of my head. Those things are things that I've been rather passionate about for a good time. So whether or not you agree with me, we're happy that you're here. But unless you can actually show me the sites, I'm probably going to stick to it. Those things said and aside, I would be more than thrilled if you guys joined us tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern. We're doing the show early tomorrow. Set your clocks, your calendars, get a sundial, draw a line on it in Sharpie, whatever you got to do. And we'll see you then. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Y'all, take care.